Welcome to the Vision and Purpose podcast, where we dive deep into the lives of incredible people who have made a mark on the world. Join us as we explore the journeys, stories, and passions of individuals who have achieved extraordinary feats, shattered barriers, and inspired us all. And now your host, Dr. Sharon H. Porter. Hello and welcome to Vision and Purpose Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Sharon H. Porter, and today we are featuring the host of the Real Teachers of Atlanta podcast. And right now we are going to welcome Mrs. Rhodes as well as Mrs. Carter. I am super excited to have them join us today. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hello, it's good to be here, people.
So excited to have you. I know it is three of you. So as soon as Mrs. Smith come on, we'll be definitely, we'll bring her in and introduce her. But right now, I'm going to ask you ladies to please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your background and your journey in education. Nikki, we're going to start with you.
Oh, okay. I'm Nikki Rhodes. I started teaching as a substitute teacher. So it was a little bit of a different journey. I started off just substituting in elementary school, didn't really like it, moved up to middle school. I liked it. They were definitely a vibe, but still I was like, not sure. Went up to high school, started subbing in high school. I was like, because I'm only 5'3" and the kids were bigger than me. So went back down to middle school, ended up substituting at a middle school local to me. And they kind of like sucked me into teaching, where it was like the AP met with me and the principal met with me and the kids were kind of vibing with me. And then they were like, can you just stay? Can you come back? And so I found myself continuously going back to the same exact school. And next thing I knew, I was teaching full-time there. And so I taught middle school math for 4.5 years. And that's kind of just how I ended up in a classroom.
Wow. I love that. I love it. I love it. I have hired several substitute teachers that start out as subbing and eventually become a full-fledged teacher. So kudos to you for that. Miss Carter, please introduce yourself and share your background in education.
Yes, I'm Miss Joia Carter. So I started out as subbing as well.
Wow.
So I'm an actress. So when I'm not acting, when I wasn't acting, I was actually subbing, to kind of supplement the income in between auditions and theater and shows and that type of thing. And so same thing with me, the AP said, hey, we think that you're doing pretty well with the kids. Why don't you take a long-term sub position? I was like, okay, I don't really pick back up with shooting until the summertime anyway. So I said, all right, I'll just stay. And then I ended up taking the GACE and then for science and all the other preliminary tests. And that's how I kind of fell into education. My intention was never to be a teacher. It's just something that I guess was my calling along the journey of life that I have. So yeah, that's how I fell into teaching.
I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
That both of you were substitutes. Oh my goodness. That really just speaks to your commitment. That you were able to get in there and connect with the students, because that's exactly what happened. You connected and then found yourself in that teaching career. So congratulations. So, I'm really excited to talk about the Real Teachers of Atlanta and would love to know exactly how the podcast was born. How did you all come together to say, hey, we're going to create this podcast and talk about the profession of teaching?
So it really just started. Yeah, it so during COVID, 2020, myself, Miss Smith, and Miss Rhodes, we taught on the same team, same sixth grade team. And so there are a lot of things that happened during COVID, as you
yes.
And there were a lot of things for our school in particular that were not the most productive for teachers to grow, for them to be the best that they could. There were a lot of just, especially with discipline, with our public school, our former school. And so we would spend a lot of time sitting in the room during lunch and just talking about the ills of our experience at the school. So one day during brunch, we said, okay, why don't we just do a podcast? Like, we're just sitting here talking about the issues in our particular school, or the issues that we're hearing from a lot of our teacher friends. Why don't we just start a podcast, a platform for teachers, real talk, real Atlanta. Let's just tell the real and raw truth about what is going on. Hopefully we can find some solutions, because also, mind you, it's the great mass exodus.
Absolutely.
Teacher exodus. There are a lot of teachers that are leaving, and it's affecting the students. So on top of that, I think for us, we wanted to create a space for teachers to talk about the issues that were going on, so that we could kind of keep teachers in the school system. Subconsciously, I think that's what we were trying to do as well, as give teachers a platform.
It's so important, because we know that a lot of things transpired during the pandemic,
Yes.
And again, coming as an elementary principal, and really understanding the gaps that exist today because of the time that we went through. That I think added to the mass exit into our profession, and not only teachers, but administrators as well, but definitely teachers, because hiring and vacancies, that's a real thing.
Yes.
So you mentioned the real and the raw, right? And so it's not always pretty. It's not always great stuff that we're talking about, right? So have you all received any backlash or pushback from school districts or school officials?
We went to the county last March. It was the end of March. Tye, Ms. Smith and I went to the county at the end of February. I apologize.
And prior to that, I would get called to the office for my social media content, and I feel like a little bit of a catalyst sometimes just because of that, but they did get called. Miss Carter and Miss Smith did get called into the district office, and it was kind of not the most friendly or pleasant experience, but
yeah. And so now, and I've listened to several podcasts, but when your guests come on, you all don't necessarily, you're not mentioning places, people, like they're just talking about the events, the things that occur, correct? Yes. And that's very important. And I know that it can be a touchy situation. And like you said, even just social media posts, as educators, we have to be, cognizant of that, right? So with that being said, have you found that your guests that come on, are they free? Are they transparent? Or do you have to really pull the transparency and the truth and the real and the raw out of them?
No, it's funny because we get all types of people that have this desire to be on the show, and there's no holding back. They just tell it like it is. They're not afraid of the backlash, and they're in the school system. So it just really is very telling of the dynamics of teachers, that teachers have been silenced for so many years. It's like they just need a place to just be very vocal about how they're feeling. So it's quite interesting that they are more raw and real than us sometimes, where we're like, when we watch the playback and we're like, okay, that's interesting, but yeah, they don't care.
Wow.
I think the uniqueness of the podcast itself, of the show, where people know what to expect. We kind of opened it up and said, hey, if you're interested, because we were starting to get a lot of inquiries, people wanting to be on the show. And I think initially we were kind of hesitant to just really open the door. We had people that we found interesting that we thought would be a great addition to the show, but once we got to a point where it was just a lot of individuals that wanted to come, and people were really willing, like Ms. Carter said, wanting to share all the aspects that they were encountering and openly. I mean, we let them know, hey, we're not going to necessarily talk about, we don't want the specifics, right? Because we do want to protect, people's place of employment.
Absolutely.
You always get the good with the bad comments. But I think that speaks to the uniqueness and the environment that we try to create on the show, where you can be yourself. We're not trying to out you. We're not bringing people on to pinpoint their rights or wrongs. It's more of, we want to hear their experience and what they bring to the table, what makes them unique in education, what's going on with them. So it's really more of a focus on that and their perspective of education.
And we are excited to see that Mrs. Smith has joined us. Welcome, Ms. Smith. So please, if you will take this time to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you and your background in education.
Well, I'm Mrs. Smith, and my background in education started with being a language arts teacher. I am now a resource teacher. I started my education journey because I was had a career in federal probation. So I seen a lot of brown kids or Black kids coming to federal probation. So a lot of link with the crimes that they were committing had something, in common with education. Not all times, but most times. So I wanted to, be that courageous person, that courageous teacher that I thought that could save some of our kids from going down that prison pipeline.
Wow, that's very noble of you. And I'm sure that there are many that you have saved. So thank you for your dedication. And so, ladies, I want to talk about some of the topics that you have really brought up on this podcast, your guests. I think one of the most recent ones was realities of teaching. I saw that, and that. So I just want to hear some of the topic and maybe some of the rawest ones that you've had.
I guess we could kind of go through maybe some of our favorite ones. I think I know that Joia actually brought up one that I still really enjoy, which was teacher self-care. I think that was very early.
That wasn't the rawest one.
No, it wasn't the raw. I think it was the raw. The teachers on drugs raw. But the one that the realest one, I think the one that resonates, I guess, with me was the teacher self-care, because I was like, yeah, I wish I'd had all of these support.
Right.
When I was going through a few things, and I just learned a lot from that episode. For me, I guess that was one that I was like, yeah, this is pretty neat. This is cool. I didn't know these things. This would have been perfect during my hey, I really need some assistance right now phases.
I love it.
But yeah, I think Joy is right too. The teachers on drugs one was really interesting.
Wow.
That was a heavy one.
That was heavy.
Teacher and narcotics.
Like for real?
Yeah.
Wow. It was a good episode.
I'm gonna have to go back and look at it.
Yeah.
One of all the episodes was the luau. I think for me, it was fun, and it got a lot of people's attention that knew us at our school.
Wow.
I think that's the one that kind of landed us
at the county office.
That was
for sure. That one was a hot topic.
Wow.
That was probably the most fun one I think we did, because we dressed up and everything. It was
wow.
Like that one.
I love it.
I also like we've talked about Black history and education. We've talked about the movement of the removal of Black history from public education around the time that DeSantis was making a lot of noise. And I think that was a really impactful episode where we were able to really talk about why it's so important for Black history to be taught in our schools, African American studies, and the studies of other minority groups as well. And we really wanted to talk through our own experiences and our own lens. We all come from very different upbringings and backgrounds. And one thing that does bring us together is, at the end of the day, we're still Black women. And this is something that is important to our history, our lineage, and for us to be able to pass on to our children, and the value that it brings to our communities. So I feel like that was another really good episode that we've had, that touched a lot of people, and it's still one of our most consistently viewed episodes. Like, it hasn't really dropped off. Some stuff you share it and like it's great and then it drops off. That's one that, I'd say is pretty consistent with the viewership. So
Wow. I love that. So, when you talk about, heavy topics, right? Things that may resonate more with others, because one of the things that I did hear you mention, I think in your promo, was the solution part. We bring the issues to the front, but even more so, we try to find solutions for those issues. So how do you really go about doing that when you bring a topic to the forefront? A guest comes and talks about their, the woes and everything that go along with that. How do you bring in those possible solutions?
I really feel like Joia started that. She made that really important.
Yeah.
So I don't know how to say that. I feel like that's a Joia.
I don't know. Miss Tye, I've talked enough, So Tye, go ahead. I'm gonna let you chime in. I'm not gonna say nothing. I'm gonna let you answer that if you like. Or would you like me to answer?
I was just gonna say, I think part of those solutions are, for me, it's a lot of things that I've done, in my own classroom. So things that have worked for me, those have been things that I've been able to share with our audience.
And and I'm thinking, and I'm just thinking of, those students, and I don't know if you all have these specific issues, but we know that social emotional learning is real, and we talk about mental health in students and teachers at this point. But when you have our, and it sounds like you all are in middle school.
Yes.
Okay, yes, I was a middle school principal too, so I know things get awry there as well. But our babies oftentimes really need some serious help, right? And so we can talk about these things because as a classroom teacher, you're on the front lines. You get the brunt of all of that, right? And I know oftentimes teachers, talk about, how the administration may not be supportive or what have you, but oftentimes the hands are tied at that level as well. So I truly believe in coming together as a school unit, right? To see how we can best serve these students because so many students are in need. And so I just want to put that out to you when you come across students who are, whether it's the discipline, the behavior for themselves, or whether they are crying out, trying to harm themselves. How do you, as a front runner, front line teacher, help that student?
I know for me, I've had a lot of students that have dealt with self-harm, whether it's by cutting or maybe an eating disorder, or just flat out just maybe smoking weed or vaping or something a little bit stronger, unfortunately, because they are dealing with those home issues. So I think for me, or for all of us, we have an open door policy. So our students feel very comfortable with speaking to us, but as educators, we are bound by law to report it to administration, to our counselors, for them to then involve maybe DFACS or whatever other organizations that are able to help the student. But a lot of students, what I found, they just want to talk. They just want someone to listen to them, someone that's not going to ridicule them or criticize them. They just want someone that they know actually cares about them. So it's just for me, it's just simply just, hey, let's just sit and just talk. If we need to sit and talk for a whole hour, which is what I've done with the student. We sat in like a science closet. She didn't want to be around any of the other students. So we just sat and we just talked for a whole hour and a half, just about her home issues that she had. Yeah, it's really heavy stuff.
Yeah.
I think that for all of us, like, you know, like Joia said, it's the real, I know that it's so cliche to say this, but we build relationships and we understand that that's the foundation of it. I don't like that scenario feels so weaponized towards teachers, but I think that that's something that the three of us have had a knack for, because our relationships with our students is all very different as well. But, you know, I'm more of like, for me in my classroom, my kids were like big huggers and we tell jokes. And some things everything couldn't be so serious. And my students understood that. But I also feel like the biggest thing was allowing them to be human, and to be who they are and not expect anything more than that, and recognize, hey, they're 12, they're 11, because I was teaching sixth graders. So they're 11, they're 12 years old. They don't know a lot yet. They aren't making a lot of their decisions. And we had to understand that they weren't being supported at home all the time. We didn't have, like at the school we were at, we didn't have a lot of parental involvement, if any at all. So a lot of times we might be the only people that cared about their academic success. We were the only ones showing up to games. So those relationships extended beyond the classroom for most of our students. So it wasn't we were able to provide, to kind of step in the gap for some of them in the best ways we could when we were available. And we tried to make that a very present, visible thing that the kids could see. And I feel like that's really what maybe changed the game for a few of our students at minimum. And we've heard back, we still hear from students that we've had years ago that reached back and want to talk or just want to share life updates and things like that with us. And so we know they're doing better or well, you know.
Yeah, and that makes a difference, because you don't always hear back from students, but when you do, it really makes a difference. So I'm excited about that. What would each of you say if you had to pick the top 3 most critical issues for teachers today? What would you say?
For me, I would say classroom management. And then secondly, I would say support. And then thirdly, I would just say time.
So is that support from any unit specifically?
I'm saying admin.
Okay.
I agree. I think I would put them in the same order, but with support, I would add community support, like from, you know, having the community rally behind you, and then administrative support as well. So I think I would add that to that. But yeah.
I would say definitely classroom management. Reading, mathematics, students' ability, computation is definitely high on the list. And then support from admin.
Wow. And as an administrator, that is like, oh, so
I know.
I want to dive into that just a little bit. Do you think it's intentional non-support, or do you think, well, just tell me why you feel the support is not where you feel it needs to be.
Speaking on past experiences, I think, and just listening to other teachers, I don't know if it's an intentional situation. However, based on some experiences that I know that we have shared, I think that there's a lack of, that's not important to me right now. The level of importance, or just not knowing maybe what to do themselves.
Interesting.
I think it's where you place your value, where you place your time. So sometimes people want to be supportive, but don't know how to support. But I also think from past experiences and conversations that I've had with educators, there is a big disconnect after a while between being an administrator and being in the classroom. And the problem that I see, that I've experienced, is there's not a lot of recognition from admin of what actually goes on in these classrooms, like right now today. I understand that maybe you were a teacher 20 years ago and you've been an admin for 15 years, But teaching 15 years ago didn't mean 100% online curriculum. It didn't involve a pandemic. It didn't involve working late. It didn't involve you also being a coach, a therapist, a mom, a dad, the communicator. It was very different. It didn't involve zero parental support. It didn't involve you figuring out how you're going to transport kids here and there. It was a lot different 15 years ago. So not a lot of recognition for how education has changed and how that means as an administrator, you also have to be just as flexible as you're asking teachers to be. So, and I'm just saying that from my experience.
And I appreciate that. Anything else to add to that?
I think you have, I've met really, really competent admin that really knew their job. They actually care about their teachers. And then you have some that just, like Ms. Smith and Ms. Rhodes said, they're just completely out of touch. And you can tell that they just don't care. They don't care about the turnaround of teachers. They don't care about the classroom management. Maybe they don't know how to manage. And that's, I don't know if that's from the leadership on down, or if I guess it just depends on the school. But that is the same type of conversation with teachers, that they aren't feeling supported. School is just different now. And then also community is a huge factor. I think a school needs to have expectations for their students. So if you have a school where the students are wearing belly shirts and leggings and bodysuits, I don't really know how much the students are going to really care about the education when you don't have a standard where you say, okay, no, this is how you come to school. Just like you go to church a particular way, you may go to a particular party a certain way if it's a theme. Everything has its time and place that, makes sense. Yeah.
And I can definitely appreciate that. And how do you feel that the podcast, and I'm not sure, do you only invite teachers, or teachers your only guests?
Oh no.
Oh, okay. So what other positions?
APs, principals.
Okay. All right.
Financial experts.
Okay. I love it. Okay. So given that, and you have a variety of positions coming on, is there one common theme that you found throughout this whole time that you have done this podcast that you can really put your finger? And I know it's not like just one thing. We know we don't have a magic bullet, right? But is there something that comes up time and time again that if we just get this right, a difference can be made?
That's a good question.
I think that there is. It's the workload is one of the biggest things that I feel like is a theme that we see, where there's just not enough time in the day, and there's this expectation that teachers will take their work home. Everything is, you can do it at home, you can do it later. And we call it the idea of the spinning plates. You're just going to keep adding pieces. When the reality is, when we say it's just one more thing, it's just one more thing, that one more thing is being added to the 2 million things that were already there. So I feel like that's the theme that I feel like I hear, obviously along with teacher pay, but if you at least brought down the number of things that just aren't really that serious, right? Like, why do I need to print a report for you that you can go in and print for yourself? Think those little things, just pulling some things off of their plate and just giving time to do the work at work, and stop the bleed with the unpaid labor. I feel like teachers would draw some more people back to the profession. I think the pay could be secondary if there was just time to do the job.
Okay.
I think for me, what Ms. Carter said is that literacy piece. I think there's a lot of teachers' frustration right now is the kids not able to do the grade level work that's presented to them. And so that's a lot of, a burden, because the teachers are now doing all the heavy lifting in the classroom. So I think we need to, be able to find some type of gap that we can try to mend to stop the bleed for our literacy that's going on right now.
Wow. So talk to me about state assessments. Where are you with that?
I think they should do away with them. Now, that's just my opinion.
I don't think
Interesting.
we need it. It's I don't see a purpose in them, especially not in Georgia.
Yeah. There's a big push for the differentiated strategies with the kids over here at this station, the kids on quizzes, the kids building some type of 3D model. But when it comes to testing, it's every child is measured the same. And so I think it's just not it. Okay, let me back up. It does assess whether, where a child's reading and math levels are. But I think that we're really, really hammering the testing, really, really pushing the testing. Everything goes out the window. But when it comes testing time, all hands are on deck. But I can't get an admin to answer my email about this child that's running around my classroom every day wreaking havoc. So it's just where are our priorities and how are we assessing and helping the entire child, the whole child.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you see as the future of our beloved profession? Where do you see it 5 to 10 years from now?
Homeschool.
Wow. Yeah. Really?
Online. Yeah. I don't think that public education's got another 20 years in it.
Wow.
It's not sustainable, the model, the way that it is right now. But I think it's intentional. I think this is an intentional dismantling of what public education is.
Yep. It's the fall of Rome, so to speak. It's everything. If you don't evolve, it's kind of like the dodo bird. It's going to become extinct.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, homeschooling, especially because schools are not safe as well.
And that's one of the major issues. And I'm glad that you brought that up because, first of all, safety is primary, right? Before anything, before learning, before anything, our staff and students need to be safe. And we have seen that that's not always the case, right? And I'm sure depending on where you are, depending on the levels, things may differ, high school, middle school, things, different variables. But when it comes to safety within your school, and I'm not speaking of your school specifically, but you've talked to many people. When it comes to safety in a school, where do you see the role of teachers, administrators, because not everyone have resource officers, not everyone, parents. Whose role primarily is it to have this safe school environment?
The total body, everyone.
But do you believe that that's what everyone thinks, though? Because we say that, right? We say that, but
we do the drills.
Right, exactly.
And the kids don't know the seriousness of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, you don't want to say it's a waste of time, but actually, it is a waste of time because they're playing when you're trying to implement the drills. So,
yeah.
And I think that's unfortunate, not, especially because, of course, every school that's been hit with something dramatic, they never thought it would be their school, right? And so that's the part that really scares me. And I say scares me, because we do practice, right? We practice, we have monthly drills, we do this, we do that. But the reality of it is, if it happens, that's going to be the real story of how we react and what students do and what staff do. Safety is real. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, a shooter. It doesn't necessarily, it could be many different things that's coming down the pike. But all of that together affects how teachers do their work, right? Because it's mentally exhausting, not just physically, but it's mentally exhausting. So as classroom teachers, How do you get the students to be more serious, to be more tuned in to, hey, we really need to know what to do if, when? How do you, as a classroom teacher, get that buy-in from the students?
It's not a serious situation until it happens.
Until it's serious.
So it's very difficult to get them to really understand, like, hey, this is something that could actually happen. But I think explaining to students without being too graphic with them, and just hope that they understand and that they actually are serious when we do the drill, and that, we practice. But with all of that, I think is very interesting that because you asked the question, whose responsibility is it essentially to protect the entire school body? And when I look at different places, like maybe a courthouse or different buildings of that nature, they're very protected. And I know we didn't, for a lot of teachers, the whole metal detector thing was not, they didn't want to feel like they were going into a prison. But I think we're at a place now where guns are just everywhere, and anyone can have access to a gun. I know we have different lawmakers that are trying to push certain bills for psychological evaluation, but I think it's gotten so out of control at this point. In my opinion, you either hope that it doesn't happen and you practice. They want to give teachers guns to hopefully maybe defend themselves, or you protect the school building, maybe putting up a fence, pushing money more into placing resource officers, metal detectors, anything at this point for you to save the children or to make sure that they're safe. Aesthetically, you can dress it up, put some little rainbows, flowers, little ladybugs, whatever you need to do to make it look cute. But we're going in one way through this metal detector. That's it. It's a fort at this point. But that costs money. And you have to value something in order to spend money on it. And I think that that's a very hard reality that people just can't understand, that people just don't care. They don't care. The drills are not working. They're just not. So
the thing is that I think Joy's, she hit the nail on the head for two things. One, we're trained. I know we had the statistics at one point of the school shootings and when it's who is doing it, and it's always someone who already had access to the school, someone who's already participated in the drill. They know the drills because they know that's their school. They were a student there, so it's not we're training. Essentially, we were training the person who was doing it. That was one thing, and I think the other thing that I feel like was the nail on the head is putting our money where our mouths are. We keep saying how important education is, how important the safety of our school is, how important this is, these kids are, how important it is to invest in our future, but there is no money. There's money for politicians. There's money for the presidents to fly in private jet everywhere they want to go. There's money for oil. There's money to fund wars. There's no money for education. And that is why I say it's an intentional dismantling of the public education system. You want something to fail, you take the money away from it. There's regular budget cuts to education, even at the state level. We have seen it year after year after year in Georgia, and teachers are constantly coming up with the slack, constantly figuring out how we're going to still fund our kids, how we're going to support our students, because we don't all have PTAs. We don't all have booster clubs. Like at the school we were at, we don't have any of those things. We didn't have support. Everything was from our pockets to our kids.
Wow.
After a while, it's frustrating.
Wow. So, ladies, what do you hope that comes out of the airing of each episode that you all put out? What is your aspiration for your podcast each and every time an episode is aired?
I hope that people get that are not in the classroom can really understand the teacher, because I know that we have all these other components of a schoolhouse, but everybody always look at the teacher. It's always the teachers that's really the forefront of a school. So I really hope that they take our teacher stories, they take our experiences, and they really can understand a day-to-day role of a teacher. Have a little compassion.
Mhm.
Help us out if you're a parent.
Yes.
That's my take.
Thank you.
I agree.
What I was going to say is that I hope that it gets enough teacher feeling brave enough to maybe respectfully speaking up instead of complaining about it behind closed doors, because that's
Yes.
not, it's not helping the situation. There is a professional way to relay your grievances or different solutions that you could give. Hopefully that they are taken with love and that you still get a contract the next year because I mean, you know how it goes. But that teachers are more vocal. And I think with anything, the first step to change is talking about it and not being afraid. I think so many teachers are afraid to talk about it because they don't want to get reprimanded or they feel like they're not going to be heard. So if they see us, then, you know, maybe we can get more teachers talking. That's my hope.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. And I just truly hope that what comes out of this is change, needed change, right? Again, as an administrator, I feel like I am one that really supports my staff and have always done that. But I don't think that that's enough to keep people, right? I mean, you can do but so much. You need a systemic push to make the necessary changes in education. I think it definitely, whatever decision is made, teachers need to be at the table. That's one of the things that I feel is missing. There are decisions made every day at every level, and there is no representation from our front line. And I've said that continuously, as a classroom teacher and as a school leader. You guys are the eyes and the ears. You have the pulse of what's going on each and every day. So I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate you creating the space so that teachers and anyone in education can be free to talk and be real and be raw. I love it. And I would just love for you to share your contact information, whether it's individually or your collective, the Real Teachers of Atlanta podcast, where our viewers can connect with you, where they can listen to the podcast and all of the great things that you all have to offer.
Yeah, we are on all social media platforms, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, obviously YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. And it's at Real Teachers of Atlanta, all spelled out. So that's how you can reach us, or, and our contact information is all of our sites as well. So if people want to, send us an email, ask a question, or be a guest on the show, it's all linked on all of our platforms. So yeah.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I thank you so much for being my guest today. And to our viewers, we will have a full feature. In addition to this podcast, they will be featured in the print magazine, Vision and Purpose Lifestyle magazine. So we will definitely keep you posted on which issue they will be in. So I'm really excited to dive in a little more with that. I applaud you, ladies, and I'm just so excited for you and hope that you get everything that you want to get out of your podcast that you get out of it. So thank you so much for taking the time to be my guest.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. And to our viewers and our listeners, we thank you for joining us on this journey to explore the depths of our guest vision and purpose. Your vision is the compass guiding you through life, and your purpose is the fuel that propels you forward. Keep dreaming, keep believing, and keep pursuing your purpose. Every step you take brings you closer to the fulfillment of that purpose. I am your host, Dr. Sharon H. Porter, and until next time, live life with vision and purpose. Have a great evening.
Thank you for joining another episode of Vision and Purpose Podcast. Please share, like, and subscribe. Please join us every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time.